People thought we were just a normal family, but our weekends were spent crawling through abandoned buildings filled with rust and rot. Every Saturday morning, my dad would burst into my room just before sunrise with that ridiculous grin of his and shout, "Adventure Day!" Like we were about to head off to Disney World, not to some rusting husk of a forgotten building. It became this ritual, part of the rhythm of our family life. My mom, usually already in the kitchen sipping her coffee with a Bible open on the counter, would just smile and say, "Be careful," like we were going for a picnic and not climbing over broken fences into places reeking of mildew and decay. I was 15, and it never struck me as weird, not really. I mean, every kid thinks their family is normal until they aren't. We had this old van that smelled permanently of fast food and old gym socks, and it would be stocked every Saturday with a thermos of my dad's awful gas station coffee, flashlights, and his ancient digital camera with the cracked screen. He was an accountant. My mom volunteered at church. People in our town thought we were this wholesome American family, the kind that makes casseroles for the neighbors and waves at mailmen. But what they didn't see were the graffiti-covered hallways, collapsed ceilings, and rusted machinery we spent our weekends crawling around. It started out fun, or at least it felt that way. There was something intoxicating about peeling paint and shattered windows, the way time seemed to have paused in those spaces. One time, we found an old hospital, the kind with ivy strangling the walls and patient files still scattered across the floor like the place had been evacuated in a panic. My dad let me take a couple of folders home, told me it was history, something to be respected. He always used words like that: preservation, documentation, legacy. He'd say we were explorers, urban archaeologists. It made me feel like we were doing something important, like those buildings held secrets only we were smart enough to uncover. And I guess I bought into it. I wanted to believe in the adventure, that this was our version of bonding. I didn't think too hard about how most of the places we went weren't just abandoned. They were dangerous. Mold bloomed on the walls in thick patches. Floors creaked under our weight like they might give out any second. Once, I stepped on a nail and had to get a tetanus shot. Another time, we found a squatter asleep in one of the rooms, and my dad just gently pulled me away and said, "Let's try the east wing instead." Like it was no big deal. My mom never came. She'd smile when we left and be waiting when we got home, like she'd timed a roast just right. I never questioned it. Looking back, it's weird how easily I accepted the separation of roles. Like her job was to stay home and pray, and his was to drag us into the belly of America's forgotten architecture. I didn't know any different. I thought all families had their version of this. It wasn't until later that things started to fray around the edges. Not all at once. Nothing ever does. But that's not this part of the story. This part is about the illusion, the shiny surface of something rotting underneath. About how a 15-year-old girl thought she was making memories while her father documented the crumbling world, both outside and inside our van. This was before the questions, before the doubt. Back when I still believed that this was just something families did. When I still thought Adventure Day meant magic, not madness. There were rules, not suggestions, actual, spoken out loud, memorize them or we turn around kind of rules. And they started early. I think I was maybe 9 the first time my dad pulled me aside before we entered a collapsing old paper mill and said, "Okay, listen up, Clara. No phones out. No talking once we're inside. And remember the code word, banana. If anything weird happens, if I say banana, you drop whatever you're doing and come find me. Understand?" I nodded, probably half excited, half confused, because it sounded like something out of a spy movie. He made me repeat it back to him, word for word, like it was some kind of oath. At the time, I thought it was cool. I felt like I was being let in on a secret world, like we were the kind of people who had code words and whispered plans. I didn't realize how strange it was that every outing followed the same rigid pattern. He always drove. He always checked the building first while I waited in the van, sometimes for 10, 20 minutes while he scouted ahead. When he came back, he'd knock on the window twice, never once, never 3 times. Always twice. That was the signal it was safe to come out. Once we were inside, everything changed. He wasn't loud and joking like he was at home or in the car. He got quiet, focused. He'd scan rooms like he was looking for something specific, but never said what. If I spoke too loud, he'd put a finger to his lips and shake his head. No talking inside. Ever. We walked carefully, footsteps measured, eyes forward. If a floor looked questionable, he'd test it first. If there was another entrance, he always checked it. If anyone else was around, even just a car parked too close, we'd drive away and come back another day. And then there was the souvenir rule. I remember once finding this old metal sign with peeling paint and cartoon lettering that said staff only. I wanted it. I picked it up and called out to him, but he rushed over and whispered harshly, "Put that down. Only broken things, Clara." We don't take stuff that still works or looks new. Got it. I didn't understand why it mattered, but I obeyed. Always obeyed. Later, in the van, he handed me a rusted screw and said, "This is better. It's just enough." Just enough for what? I didn't ask. Every trip ended with a ritual cleanup. He had wipes in the glove box, always wiped down the flashlight handles, the camera if he used it, even our hands if we didn't get too dirty. He never took pictures inside the buildings, only exterior shots from a distance. He said it was to protect the locations from vandals or wannabe explorers, but he had this whole speech about it. We don't post. We don't share. We remember. That's what makes it special. I repeated that one too, like a script. Back then, I swallowed every bit of it like communion. I thought it was just my dad being overprotective, maybe even a little dramatic. I didn't realize I was following a pattern, not for safety, but for control, for precision. It wasn't until years later, looking back, that I realized how meticulously planned it all was. He had maps printed out even when GPS was right there on his phone. He kept a logbook in his glove box, dates, times, names of buildings, notes in this neat, careful handwriting. Sometimes there were codes I didn't understand, little numbers or letters next to entries. It was supposed to be fun. That's what I kept telling myself. But the older I got, the more it started to feel like something else. Something rehearsed. Something too exact to be spontaneous. Like we were running drills. Not exploring. Not adventuring. Like I was being trained for something I didn't understand. And the weirdest part is I never told anyone. Not a single friend. Not a teacher. Not even mom. Because he made me promise. First with a smile, later with that quiet, serious look that left no room for argument. No one else needs to know, Clara. It's our thing. Our adventure. Our secret. Just you and me. And I believed him. For too long, I believed him. There were rules, not suggestions, actual, spoken out loud, memorize them or we turn around kind of rules. And they started early. I think I was maybe 9 the first time my dad pulled me aside before we entered a collapsing old paper mill and said, "Okay, listen up, Clara. No phones out. No talking once we're inside. And remember the code word, banana. If anything weird happens, if I say banana, you drop whatever you're doing and come find me. Understand?" I nodded, probably half excited, half confused, because it sounded like something out of a spy movie. He made me repeat it back to him, word for word, like it was some kind of oath. At the time, I thought it was cool. I felt like I was being let in on a secret world, like we were the kind of people who had code words and whispered plans. I didn't realize how strange it was that every outing followed the same rigid pattern. He always drove. He always checked the building first while I waited in the van, sometimes for 10, 20 minutes while he scouted ahead. When he came back, he'd knock on the window twice, never once, never 3 times. Always twice. That was the signal it was safe to come out. Once we were inside, everything changed. He wasn't loud and joking like he was at home or in the car. He got quiet, focused. He'd scan rooms like he was looking for something specific, but never said what. If I spoke too loud, he'd put a finger to his lips and shake his head. No talking inside. Ever. We walked carefully, footsteps measured, eyes forward. If a floor looked questionable, he'd test it first. If there was another entrance, he always checked it. If anyone else was around, even just a car parked too close, we'd drive away and come back another day. And then there was the souvenir rule. I remember once finding this old metal sign with peeling paint and cartoon lettering that said staff only. I wanted it. I picked it up and called out to him, but he rushed over and whispered harshly, "Put that down. Only broken things, Clara. We don't take stuff that still works or looks new." Got it. I didn't understand why it mattered, but I obeyed. Always obeyed. Later, in the van, he handed me a rusted screw and said, "This is better. It's just enough." Just enough for what? I didn't ask. Every trip ended with a ritual cleanup. He had wipes in the glove box, always wiped down the flashlight handles, the camera if he used it, even our hands if we didn't get too dirty. He never took pictures inside the buildings, only exterior shots from a distance. He said it was to protect the locations from vandals or wannabe explorers, but he had this whole speech about it. We don't post. We don't share. We remember. That's what makes it special. I repeated that one too, like a script. Back then, I swallowed every bit of it like communion. I thought it was just my dad being overprotective, maybe even a little dramatic. I didn't realize I was following a pattern, not for safety, but for control, for precision. It wasn't until years later, looking back, that I realized how meticulously planned it all was. He had maps printed out even when GPS was right there on his phone. He kept a logbook in his glove box, dates, times, names of buildings, notes in this neat, careful handwriting. Sometimes there were codes I didn't understand, little numbers or letters next to entries. It was supposed to be fun. That's what I kept telling myself. But the older I got, the more it started to feel like something else. Something rehearsed. Something too exact to be spontaneous. Like we were running drills. Not exploring. Not adventuring. Like I was being trained for something I didn't understand. And the weirdest part is I never told anyone. Not a single friend. Not a teacher. Not even mom. Because he made me promise. First with a smile, later with that quiet, serious look that left no room for argument. No one else needs to know, Clara. It's our thing. Our adventure. Our secret. Just you and me. And I believed him. For too long, I believed him. It was during a sleepover at my friend Ava's house when I let it slip. We were sitting on the floor in her room, surrounded by soda cans and half-finished bags of chips, talking about weekend plans. She mentioned her dad was taking them to a movie, something normal and boring, and I, without thinking, told her that my dad and I had a tradition too. I remember how proud I sounded, like I was sharing something special, something not everyone got to do. Every Saturday we go explore abandoned places, I said, smiling. Old factories, train stations, hospitals sometimes. It's kind of our thing. Ava blinked at me, confused. Like, with permission? I laughed and shook my head. No, it's like, sneaking in. It's more fun that way. I didn't notice how quiet the room got after that, or how her expression changed, until her dad knocked and asked if we wanted pizza. I followed Ava downstairs, still buzzing from the conversation, but something shifted when her dad came into the room. He was in uniform, Detective Monroe, badge and everything, still wearing his belt with the radio clipped on. He handed us plates, made a joke about teenagers and metabolism, and then said, casually, "So I hear you and your dad like to do a little exploring." I froze mid-bite, plate balanced on my lap. I nodded slowly. Yeah, it's kind of our weekend thing. He didn't smile. He didn't nod back. He just stared at me for a beat too long and then said, in the same even tone, "You mean breaking and entering?" The air shifted. Ava looked at the floor. I laughed, a nervous, knee-jerk kind of laugh, like maybe he was joking. No, we don't break anything. We just go in. Most of the places are already open. The doors are broken or there's a window or something. He set his plate down and leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Clara, that's still trespassing. Doesn't matter if the door's already open. And if you're taking anything, even broken stuff, that's theft. It hit me like a slap. Not the words, exactly, but the way he said them. Calm, firm, final. No room for misunderstanding or negotiation. I felt this weird heat crawl up my neck and settle in my chest. But it's abandoned, I said, quieter now. There's no one there. No one cares. He sighed and shook his head, not unkindly. That's not how the law works. Someone owns those properties. A bank, a developer, sometimes even the city. Doesn't matter if they're falling apart. And going in without permission, taking anything, souvenirs or not, that's illegal. If a cop caught you in there, you could be arrested. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mind was racing, replaying all the Saturdays like a slideshow stuck on fast forward. The locks we ignored. The fences we climbed. The way my dad always parked the van a few blocks away. The gloves he made me wear. The wipes after. The maps. The code word. Banana. 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 Detective Monroe softened a little when he saw my face. He knelt down a bit, so we were eye level. I'm not trying to scare you, Clara, but you need to know what you're doing. This isn't a game. If you get hurt, or caught, it's serious. I nodded, but everything inside me was crumbling. I excused myself, went upstairs, sat on Ava's bed while she fiddled with her phone and avoided looking at me. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things that had never made sense, but I'd never questioned. How careful Dad always was. How he told me never to talk about our adventures. How he always insisted we bring back something small, something broken, something no one would miss. For the first time, it didn't feel like a game anymore. It felt like I'd been walking through someone else's story, blindfolded, trusting every word he said without ever asking why. That conversation with Ava's dad didn't just plant doubt. It cracked something open. And once that crack was there, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't go back. Not really. Not even when I wanted to. I remember the way the gravel crunched under our tires as we pulled up to the gate. One of those tall wrought iron things with peeling black paint, and a chain looped lazily through the middle like someone had tried to make it look locked without actually securing it. My dad got out, gloves already on, and muttered something about how this one was special. It was a mansion, or what used to be one. White stone pillars, wide arched windows, long cracked driveway choked with weeds. But unlike most of our other destinations, this place didn't look forgotten. The lawn had been recently cut, There were fresh tire tracks in the mud near the garage, and a plastic porta-potty stood near the back, standard for a construction site. I pointed it out. Are you sure this one's empty? He gave me that look. The one that said, trust me, just a renovation. They're probably not even working weekends. We'll be quick. He waved Mom and me forward, and we ducked under the loose chain, boots sinking slightly into the wet ground. It had rained that morning. Everything smelled like earth and wood rot. We entered through a broken side door. He'd clearly come here before because he knew exactly where to push, where the latch was weak. The inside was surprisingly clean, nothing like the decaying hospitals or rusted-out factories we were used to. The walls had been stripped to drywall, exposed beams in some rooms, plastic sheets taped over certain doorways. We moved like we always did, quietly, efficiently, like this was a job. Mom stayed close to Dad, flashlight in hand, sweeping each room like it was protocol. I trailed behind, already uneasy, heart beating too fast. Every creak of a floorboard made me jump. Something felt off. Too bright, too intact, too alive. Then we reached the second floor. One of the bedrooms, probably a guest room once, had been turned into a sort of storage area. Drop cloths, boxes of tiles, paint cans. And on the far side, partially hidden behind a plastic sheet, was an old wooden chest with brass corners and a rusted lock hanging loose from the latch. Dad went straight to it. He crouched down, ran his hand over the top like he already knew what was inside. Then he popped it open, and there it was, jewelry. Not costume junk either. Real necklaces, heavy-looking watches, rings with dull but unmistakable glints of stone. Mom let out this soft little gasp. Dad turned to me. His voice was low but urgent. Take it. Put some in your bag. Just the loose stuff. For a second I thought he was joking. But his face. God, I'll never forget his face. It was focused. Cold. Not like we were on an adventure. Like we were on a mission. I shook my head. Dad, this isn't broken stuff. This isn't. Just do it, he snapped. Not loud, but sharp enough that Mom flinched. Hurry. And then everything exploded. A voice, deep, angry, barked from downstairs. This is private property. Show yourselves now. Dad froze. I stopped breathing. Mom's flashlight slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The next few seconds were a blur of movement and noise. Heavy boots pounding up the stairs. My mom screaming my name. My dad yelling something I couldn't understand. I couldn't move. I felt warmth spreading down my legs and realized I'd peed myself. I just stood there, eyes locked on that chest of jewelry, unable to look away, like if I stared hard enough I could make all of it vanish. Then the security guard burst in, mid-40s, uniform damp with sweat, flashlight and phone in one hand, gun holstered but visible. Hands where I can see them. Don't move. Mom dropped to her knees, sobbing. Dad raised his hand slowly, his face a mess of panic and calculation, like he was trying to figure out how to talk his way out of this. I couldn't stop shaking. The air felt too thick to breathe. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. The cops came fast after that. Someone had already called them. I don't remember much of the ride to the station, just the hard plastic of the back seat, the way the cuffs looked on my mom's wrists, the officer in the front seat radioing something in a calm voice while I tried not to throw up. That was the last adventure day. And that was when the illusion shattered, when everything that had felt like a quirky family tradition cracked wide open to show the rot underneath. My dad wasn't an explorer. He wasn't a historian. He was a thief. And we weren't documenting forgotten places. We were just breaking into them. And I'd spent years thinking it was all just part of the game. They separated us at the station. Me in a room with a female officer and a social worker, my little brother Liam with someone else, and our parents held somewhere deeper inside the building. I was still in my wet clothes, shivering under a blanket that smelled like antiseptic and old fabric. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold the cup of water they gave me. The officer, her voice low and calm like she was talking to someone about to jump off a ledge, asked me to tell her everything. Not just about that night. Everything. So I did. It all came spilling out, like a dam breaking after years of pressure. Every detail. Every Saturday. Every building. I told her about the van stocked with gloves and flashlights. The logbook Dad kept in the glove box with codes and dates. The rule about taking only broken things. The code word, banana, and how we were never allowed to speak inside the buildings. How Dad tested floors before we stepped. How we cleaned our hands before going home. How Mom always waited by the door like she'd been part of it all along. I told them I thought it was a game. That it was just something our family did. I told them I didn't understand until that night. Until Ava's dad. Until the jewelry box. Until the gun on that guard's belt made my whole world feel like it had been spun inside out. The questions came slow and careful. Had I ever seen them sell anything? Did they keep what they took? Did they make me take things too? I said yes. Not every time, but enough. rusted doorknobs, pieces of broken signage, a shattered camera lens, bent spoons. Once, an old Bible with its cover torn off. I didn't even know what we were doing. I thought it was history. I thought we were collectors. I didn't know it was theft. They let me sleep at the station that night, on a plastic cot with a scratchy blanket. Liam curled up in a separate room, too young to understand anything beyond the fact that Mom wasn't there to tuck him in and Dad wasn't making jokes to distract him. The next morning, my Aunt Jennifer arrived. I hadn't seen her in 2 years, not since she moved to Oregon. She looked smaller than I remembered, older, more tired. But when she saw me, she hugged me like the world hadn't just caved in, and I broke down all over again. They didn't let us go home. Said the house had to be searched. Evidence. I didn't even know we had evidence. To me, it was just a shelf of random old junk in the garage. Turns out it was a catalog of years of petty theft. They charged my parents with trespassing, burglary, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, inciting minors to commit a crime, systematic criminal behavior. The words didn't make sense to me at first. They sounded like something out of a crime show. But then I saw the way the officers talked about them, not as quirky parents with a weird hobby, but as people who had built their lives around calculated, organized, illegal behavior. And I realized, all at once, they were right. The trial didn't start for months, but our family didn't make it that long. Aunt Jennifer got temporary custody of Liam and me, and we were flown to Portland within a week. New schools, new therapists, new rules, no contact with Mom or Dad, no visits, just a series of letters I couldn't bring myself to open and phone calls I let go to voicemail. Everything I knew, everything I thought was safe, sacred, normal, was suddenly gone. I kept waiting for the grief to settle into something solid, something I could touch, but it just stayed this floating, dizzying ache. The worst part wasn't the arrest. It wasn't even the trial or the move. It was waking up each morning with the realization that none of it had been real. The laughter, the excitement, the Saturday rituals, the quiet smiles in the rearview mirror. All of it had been built on a lie. I didn't have a happy childhood. I had a crime scene. And it took the sound of police sirens and the look on a security guard's face to finally see it. We came back months later. The house felt like a museum of someone else's life. Silent, too clean, every corner draped in dust and silence. Aunt Jennifer had flown back with us to finalize some paperwork, but she stayed in the car when I stepped through the door. Liam stayed behind in Portland. He didn't want to see it. Couldn't. I didn't blame him. The living room looked exactly the same as the day we were taken away, except colder, hollower, like the walls had exhaled and forgotten how to inhale again. The familiar smell was gone. No coffee, no lavender cleaner, just wood, old dust, and this sour trace of something that might have been grief. I walked slowly, pausing near the couch, the one with the blue stitching I used to sit on for movie nights, back when everything still felt whole. My mother was in the kitchen. She didn't turn when I walked in, just stood at the counter, shoulders slumped, hands clenched around a chipped mug of cold tea. She looked smaller, like something inside her had been scooped out and left to rot. When she finally spoke, her voice was so low it barely touched the air. I knew. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My nails dug into my palms. She turned, eyes swollen and red but dry now, like she'd used up everything she had months ago. I knew everything, she said again. From the start. The buildings. The stolen things. The money. I knew. I felt something crack in my chest. Why? It didn't come out angry. Not yet. Just hollow. Her fingers trembled as she set the mug down. Because I was scared. Because we were drowning. Your father, he lost his job years ago. We were living on credit cards and lies. He started selling things from the buildings. Antique shops. Online. Even at flea markets. It worked. At first, it worked. Then it didn't matter if it was right anymore. It was just what we did. I shook my head. So the uniforms? The groceries? My shoes. My voice broke somewhere in there. They were all paid for with stolen crap. She nodded, eyes brimming now. Your piano lessons. The trip to San Diego. The new fridge. Everything, Clara. Everything. I exploded. I don't even remember picking up the photo frame. Just that I threw it. Hard. It shattered against the wall beside her. My hands reached for anything. Books, cups, that ugly little glass angel she kept by the window, and I hurled them one after another. I screamed and screamed and screamed, my throat raw, my vision blurred with tears and fury. I could barely see her anymore through the blur. You made us criminals, I shouted, voice cracking with a fury that came from some place I didn't even know existed. You didn't just ruin your life. You ruined mine. You lied. You stood there and let him drag us into this, and you smiled. Every Saturday, you let him turn us into thieves. She didn't defend herself, just stood there, arms limp at her sides, crying silently now. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. And I hated her for it. Hated the way she looked broken only after being caught. Hated that all this time, she'd been pretending to be scared of the buildings, of the darkness, of the mold and the creaking floors, when really, she'd been scared of something much worse, the truth. I dropped to my knees in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by broken glass and torn paper, sobbing so hard my ribs hurt. She took a step forward, but I screamed so loud she froze in place. "Don't touch me." And she didn't. I don't know how long I stayed there. The sun shifted through the window, shadows moved across the floor, and I just sat in the wreckage of our home, trying to remember if anything had ever been real, trying to find even a single thing untouched by their secrets. I couldn't. Not the couch, not the spoon, not the rug under my knees. Every part of our life was paid for with rot, and I had no idea who I was without it. They came with trucks, 3 black SUVs, 2 patrol cars, and a white van with property recovery stenciled in peeling letters on the side. Officers in gloves and boot covers moved through the house like it was a crime scene, which, of course, it was. The search warrant covered everything. Bedrooms, closets, attic, garage, even the crawl space under the stairs. They took everything. Not just the obvious stuff, jewelry, electronics, old tools, but the things I never would have imagined. My soccer trophy, the ceramic music box I'd had since I was 6, Liam's toy robot with the blinking eyes. One officer held up a rusted lunchbox we'd found at some crumbling train depot 3 years ago and tagged it with evidence tape. I watched from the front steps, arms wrapped around my knees, the sidewalk burning through my jeans. Mom sat beside me, face blank, mouth tight. Dad was already in custody, out on bail, but under house arrest. He didn't come outside. The restitution estimate came a week later. $213, 400. That was the number. The judge called it reasonable damages for the value of stolen property, damages to private holdings, and loss of commercial use due to illegal entry. Those words didn't feel like real language. They sounded like something you hear in a documentary about white-collar crime. But to us, they meant one thing: we were screwed. They seized the house. The bank took back the van. The court froze what little savings we had. Mom's name was flagged on every credit report. I had to give up my phone. Liam lost his gaming console. Even our school laptops were held for investigation, just in case they'd been purchased with stolen money, which they had. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex that always smelled like mold and cigarette smoke, wedged between a freeway on-ramp and a strip mall. The walls were thin. The plumbing groaned at night. The carpet was stained, the windows stuck when you tried to open them, and the heater made a sound like it was choking every time it kicked on. The first day back at school, I thought maybe I could fake normal for a while. I wore the same clothes I'd worn before, tied my hair the same way, walked the same route. But I hadn't made it 10 steps past the cafeteria before someone whispered it. "Daughter of a thief." I turned. A group of juniors, standing by the vending machine, watching me with that look. The one people wear when they want you to know they're enjoying your shame. I kept walking, pretending not to hear. But the whisper followed me. In class, in the halls, online. Someone made a meme using my old yearbook photo with a caption that read, "Found this in a stolen locker." Liam didn't even make it through his first week. He came home with a split lip and a swollen eye, sobbing so hard he couldn't talk. He said some 6th grader called him little thief during recess, and when he told them to shut up, the kid shoved him. Then 2 more joined in. Nobody stopped it. Not a teacher. Not a single other student. They just watched. I went to the principal. She smiled politely, nodded a lot, said things like zero tolerance for bullying, and we're monitoring the situation. But nothing changed. Every day felt like a gauntlet. Every laugh felt like it might be about me. Every silence too loud. I stopped raising my hand in class. Stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria. I spent most days hiding in the library or in the back stairwell by the gym. Mom tried to hold it together. Got a job at a diner, working late shifts, coming home smelling like grease and burnt coffee. She smiled a lot at first, like she was trying to prove we could make it work. But every time another letter came, court fines, overdue bills, Liam's therapy invoices, that smile cracked a little more. One night, I heard her crying through the bathroom door, her sobs muffled by the sound of the shower running. I didn't go in. We were pariahs now. Not just poor, not just struggling, but marked. People didn't just pity us, they judged us. Like we'd chosen this. Like I'd been complicit. Like I'd loved the taste of rust and rot and lies. They didn't see the Saturday mornings when I thought I was an explorer. When I believed we were different in a good way. When I thought our weird life was something to be proud of. They didn't see the child in me that trusted every smile, every rule, every whispered promise of adventure. All they saw was the headline. And I couldn't even blame them. Because now that's all I saw too. My father was sentenced to 5 years in state prison. No possibility of parole for the first 3. I didn't go to the hearing. I stayed home with Liam, made him grilled cheese, and tried not to look at the news. Mom came back that night looking like she'd aged another decade. She didn't cry. She just went straight to her room and closed the door. We never really talked about it after that. What was left to say? She picked up a second job within 2 weeks, mornings at the diner, evenings cleaning offices downtown. Her hands started to crack from the constant bleach and dish soap. Her voice got hoarse. Her shoulders stooped lower every month. But she kept going, always moving. Like if she slowed down, everything would collapse again. I did what I could. School. Groceries. Liam. I stopped complaining. Stopped asking for things. I applied for a job shelving books at the library and used the money for cheap clothes, bus passes, and anything to make sure Liam didn't feel like the world had swallowed us whole. But I couldn't protect him from everything. I found out about the stealing by accident. I opened his backpack one afternoon and saw a handful of action figures still in their packaging, a candy bar he didn't have money for, a pair of earbuds I knew weren't his. He froze when he saw me looking. Tried to lie at first, said they were a gift from a friend, that he found them. But he's a terrible liar, just like Dad was when he got nervous. The words came too fast, too rehearsed. His eyes darted like he was searching for the nearest exit. I didn't yell. I just sat down on the edge of the bed and told him to hand me everything. Then I took his hand, and we walked back to the store together. I made him explain, made him apologize. I didn't speak for him. I didn't let him hide. He cried the whole time. I did too. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed on the floor by his bed, just listening to his breathing, wondering how far it would have gone if I hadn't caught it early. If I hadn't dragged him back. If I'd ignored the signs like Mom used to. That's when I realized, we didn't just inherit trauma. We inherited patterns. We learned how to survive in lies. And it was up to me to break that. Years passed. I graduated. Got a job. Helped Mom move us into a better apartment. Not much better, but it had clean walls and a working heater. Liam started therapy. He stopped stealing. Started drawing. He got quiet for a while, then slowly started coming back to life. He made friends. Learned how to trust himself again. And then Dad got out. It was surreal, watching him walk across the lot outside the halfway house, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, wearing a state-issued windbreaker and that same look he used to wear every Saturday morning. The one that said he had a plan. The one that used to make me feel safe before I realized it meant danger. He hugged us. Held Mom longer than he should have. Gave Liam a pat on the back. Tried to smile at me, but I couldn't return it. Not really. We met for coffee a few times. He talked about how prison changed him. How he saw what he'd done. How he wanted to be different now. He said he was sorry. He said it a lot. But every time he talked, I watched his eyes. I watched the way they flicked to the door, scanned the room. The way his hands moved too carefully when he reached for things. Like he still saw the world as a map of opportunity and risk. Like he was still calculating. One afternoon, I asked him, would you do it again if no one had found out? He didn't answer. He just looked away. That was my answer. I love my father. I probably always will. But I don't trust him. I don't trust that the remorse he shows isn't just another script. I don't trust that the part of him that built our life on crime has disappeared. It lives in him. It lives in us too, in the damage we're still untangling. So that's my story. That's the childhood I thought was a movie, only to find out it was a slow burn heist film with a tragic ending. I'm trying to rebuild. We all are. Some days are okay. Some days, it feels like we're still climbing out of that mansion, hearts pounding, flashlights shaking, the sirens just starting to rise in the distance. But we're trying.